understanding what you're saying about diet, about eating a whole food, plant-based diet, you're saying you're ideally raw, and you're saying as much, it's a lot raw, but a whole food, plant-based diet with lots of raw foods and steamed vegetables. When it comes to the subject of supplementation, what are the, I know the answer is you'd have to see the person, you'd have to look at their blood, you'd have to analyze them, but what are the generalizations that you would say for a person that wants their memory to be good, that wants to stay healthy, that doesn't want to be deficient? If you had to, name the absolutes that everyone walking, going home, you're saying, number one, eat a whole food plant-based diet. Number two, exercise 5 days a week. Number three, get 7 to 8 hours of sleep, have low stress. What are you saying is the exact list of supplements that you want to make sure that people should be taking? If you don't think they should take any, say that. If you think that they should be taking B12 and other things, I don't want to have any pitfalls. I don't want to be overconfident and say, oh, I'm vegan, I'm okay. Like, what do I need to make sure, and does this audience need to make sure that they are taking every day in terms of supplementation?
If you come to my talk tomorrow on vegan nutrition, I will show you a label of the multivitamin that I take every morning. And we've all really, it's been a remarkable thing to see in the past decade or so. We all came into nutrition biz, at least the Times were dictating that multivitamins are good for you, high potency, one a day, take your vitamins, they can't do any harm. And people do, and people did, and they still do. Well, science says, what happens to people who really take these high-potency multivitamins? And when the cold eye of science has been turned on the long-term studies, indeed, it turns out that you're taking a multivitamin that has 10,000 units, 50,000 units of vitamin A in it. Well, your body can't get rid of 50,000 units of vitamin A every day. And this stuff, as the weeks go by, starts building up in your tissues and starts having pharmaceutical effects that you don't want. People who take high-dose vitamin A get hip fractures. People who take high-dose beta-carotene, if you've got a lung cancer going, it makes it grow faster. People who take folic acid, not folate, but folic acid, women get more breast cancers, guys get more prostate cancers. Iron in multivitamin tablets, it's an oxidizing agent. It increases risk of artery disease. So all of us, starting in around the 90s and 2000, as these studies came out, we all got chastened, and everybody's pretty much backed off a lot, well, certainly the high-potency multivitamin train. And we've gotten much more specific, and we've gotten down to, there's 5 basic nutrients that you can get out of foods, but I don't want to bet my spinal cord or my cerebral function on it. So certainly vitamin B12, without that you don't get out of foods. And I'll go into this tomorrow in my talk, but you should definitely take some vitamin B12. I like the methylcobalamin form, at least 500 micrograms twice a week is always safe. That's the absolute requirement. If you live a 21st century life and you're not out in the sunshine, if you're in an office and you're in your vehicle, whatever, nobody's getting much sunshine falling on their skin, and vitamin D is an issue. Too low vitamin D levels predispose you to everything from immune deficiencies to dementia, and whatever you need to take orally, if you can do it on sunshine, great. A half hour out in the sun is the best way to get your vitamin D level up. But if it's just not a reality for you, especially this time of year, then 2,000 units of vegan vitamin D are appropriate. Vitamin K2 is an issue. That's the type of vitamin K that makes calcium go to your bones, not your artery walls. It's a reason to eat a ton of greens. If you eat a big helping of something green at least once a day, preferably twice a day, but kale, chard, broccoli, Brussels sprout, bok choy, you throw enough of that down your gut, your microbes will make a bunch of K2, and it usually isn't a problem. But if you've got osteoporosis, some vitamin K2 is a good idea to have in there. The fourth one is iodine for your thyroid gland. If you're not eating fish, every molecule of thyroxine that your thyroid gland makes has 4 atoms of iodine. And some of the folks who aren't consuming fish or sea vegetables and wind up with a low-grade iodine deficiency, the folks who say, I've been vegan for a few years, I don't feel as much energy, I think some of that at least might be subclinical hypothyroidism from iodine deficiency. So make sure you've got an iodine source. Come to my talk tomorrow and I'll talk about seaweed and all that stuff and iodized salt. But that also, 150 micrograms of iodine in a supplement is a good idea. And then finally, there's the long-chain omega-3 fatty acids, DHA and EPA. You can theoretically make this out of the linolenic acid in flax seeds and walnuts, and everybody should have a handful of walnuts every day and a couple tablespoons of ground flax. But if you aren't making enough of this stuff to keep your brain healthy, there are studies showing that as the decades go by, long-term vegans can suffer brain shrinkage and dementia risk. So taking a little extra DHA/EPA from algae, not from fish, I think is a prudent move. And again, well, why do you have to take these things if it's all, if it's a natural diet? Why do I have to be taking these supplements? Because unlike our ancestors, as Dr. Popper said, we don't spend all day foraging by the seashore and pulling up unwashed vegetables to get our B12 and foraging for sea vegetables. We don't do that anymore. And because it's one of the concessions we have to make to modern life. So eat plants and get on with it, but assure these 5 nutrient sufficiencies. I'll show you the vitamin that I take that has it. You can mix and match on your own, but those are the 5 that I would suggest make sure you get covered. But it's the food, it's the food, it's the food. It's in the big salads and the steamed veggies and the vegetable soups and the lentil stews and the bean tacos. It's in the food. This is just an insurance policy just to make sure you don't get caught short.
I think people who have pernicious anemia or who are vegan and don't eat any fortified foods should take a B12 supplement. I don't have any rules for the others other than to use the same evidence standard, like, what's the benefit I'm going to get, the risk I'm going to take, and does that pan out for me? I have concerns about supplements like you do. And one of the concerns, first of all, a lot of supplements are labeled natural, and there's really no such thing as a natural supplement, because when they tell you it comes from a plant source, it starts with a plant source and goes through 6 chemical, or processes to become what it is, because we don't grow enough plant food on the entire planet to fuel the supplement industry as it is today. So natural is a subjective term, very subjective term, and you should be careful about that. I think the second thing is that we just don't know what the outcomes data look like for many supplements. I mean, people will say, I couldn't find any evidence that there's a side effect. Well, it's because it's never been studied. It's not because it's been studied and there isn't evidence of a side effect, right? So you should know that. I'm not opposed to people taking some of these things. I just think that informed people should know these things before they make a decision. Another problem we have is that for all the bad things we can say about drugs, and there's certainly plenty of things to say, we do know a lot about drug-drug interactions. We really do. We really don't know a lot about supplement interactions and what happens when you take some combination of 5 or 6 things, and nobody's ever really studied what happens when you take those 5 or 6 things. So I'm a little more cautionary about it. And some things I'll spend some time talking people out of, but most of the time it's up to you, and look at the evidence and then decide what you think is right to do. And I want to be very clear about this, and I think this is something we would all agree on, is that supplementation has become a form of holistic pharmacist behavior. In other words, people are avoiding the changes they need to make in their diet and lifestyle habits by taking supplements, thinking it's some kind of an insurance policy. And notice what Dr. Klaper was saying. It's the food, it's the food, it's the food, and here's some things to take instead of, or in addition to. I'm seeing in my office a lot of people who they really haven't changed their diet in substantive ways. Their belief in supplementation is that this will protect them in spite of the fact that they're still not eating well, and that's simply not true. So the foundation of this is it's the food, it's the food, it's the food, And then we can have some discussion about the rest of this, but without the food as the foundation, the rest of this doesn't end up mattering very much.
So for patients that are on vegan diets, we definitely advocate methylcobalamin or vitamin B12. We recommend 1,000 micrograms a day. That's enough to meet virtually everybody's needs, even people with serious gastric challenges, because B12 will absorb passively at a very small level, around 2%. So that's why we recommend 1,000 micrograms. So you wouldn't need that much for most people, but fortunately it's not one with a high risk profile. It's a water-soluble nutrient. We recommend our patients do blood testing once a year. If their vitamin D level is low, we try to get them out in the sun. If they can't get enough from the sun, then we would supplement that to whatever minimum level is necessary to get them to a normal level of D. Iodine is a theoretical limiting nutrient. Ground vegetables, if you eat lots of raw and cooked vegetables like we advocate, generally meet the needs. But if not, you could certainly include small amounts of sea vegetables, being careful to deal with the sodium contamination issue. And DHA also, for people that maybe don't convert omega-3 for some reason, they have clinical symptoms or they test low, certainly that could be an algae-based supplementation. But the only supplement that we recommend routinely for all vegan patients is 1,000 micrograms of methylcobalamin a day, and everything else would be either clinically or indicated by testing. And the thing is, the risk-reward ratio for supplements often is higher risk than reward. So if you're going to take them, there ought to be a darn good reason why you're doing it, because it's even the ones that might be clinically indicated aren't without potential side effects.
Right. Well, and to add to that, one thing that we do know, the reason why all drugs have a side effect is because they have an effect. So you can't have an effect without a side effect. If you're manipulating one thing in the body, you're going to end up with some corresponding thing. Sometimes we know what that is, and sometimes we don't know what that is. I mean, high-dose vitamin C becomes a pro-oxidant instead of an antioxidant. We know that. So are there indications for high-dose vitamin C? Sometimes, but you should know that you're going to want to time limit it because of that pro-oxidant conversion.
I totally agree in principle with what you said, that we should be getting, as we always did historically, our nutrition from organic plant-based foods. But back in the late 1990s, there was a study, maybe Dr. Klaper remembers, at a Brigham's Women's Hospital. I used to speak there when we were still in Boston, that they had people on beta-carotene. At that point, I thought, gee, beta-carotene is a natural form of vitamin A. And halfway through the study on lung cancer, they had to stop it, because they literally showed double the growth of tumor masses in the lungs on beta-carotene. So that provoked me to really spend 3 to 4 years of my life researching this, and it came together in a book I wrote called Supplements Exposed. Now, unlike Pam, who says there's no such thing as natural food supplements, the word is thrown around and the laws have been skewed since the 1930s. I give this all historically. The pharmaceutical industry, by the way, were the fathers and mothers of the supplement industry. The very first supplement ever discovered was only 1905 by William Fletcher, who was trying to eliminate beriberi, and he called it vitamin B, and he did it successfully. The doctors in that day thought that beriberi was a demon that got into your body and was killing people. And then by the year 1912, the name vitamin came about. Casimir Funk, a Polish-born research physician who was working at the Lister Institute, which is in Scotland. Lister was as important as Pasteur, but never got the name, gave us the name vitamin, vita meaning life and amine from growth. And so what happened by the 1930s, Merck of Germany, who also brought you gases for the chamber, decided to make the very first synthetic supplement called ascorbic acid. In my book, I point out, with the help of my friend, Dr. Scarborough, that ascorbic acid, and when it's labeled like that, is only 1/7 vitamin C. And you can take any vitamin, be it beta-carotene or vitamin E, which is made in great part of turpentine, vitamin B, which is in great part made of coal tar. You drove here on coal tar, and check any of these facts. And literally, you put those into your body, and you put isolated chemicals into your body, your immune system attacks it. So God forbid these alternative doctors who are pumping chemical supplements into the veins of people to reverse cancer, because I can promise you that they're going to get worse. Because now their immune system is literally now taking care of the deadly chemical supplement you've spent $10, $20, $30, $40 for. But there is a need today. A friend of mine is a psychologist, professor, happened to be involved 30 years ago in research on stress. And the stress today, listen closely, compared to a woman or man 100 years ago, is 15,000 times more. That's average. Some of you have 50,000 probably. Now why? Because remember, 100 years ago we didn't have television, we didn't have radio, we didn't have high-speed cars, we didn't have jet planes, and we lived in communities where the biggest problem we had is our child was crying, or the neighbor wasn't as nice to you as you'd like. Today we have CNN, Sky News, and if you really want to get stressed, Fox News. And you can watch this and you get stressed. So then you jump in your car and I don't run around, I don't drink, but I do drive fast. It's my one outlet. And Henry Ford, when he was going to make an assembly line for cars, was concerned because when cars would get up to 5 miles an hour, people were jumping off. This is a fact, by the way. You can read this, because they couldn't control the car. Remember, everyone walked, or if you had a little money, you were on a horse at that point. So because we have this enormous amount of stress, we need more nutrition today than ever. So I've been studying deeply nutrition and doing sophisticated tests from companies like Genova that really look at it. And 70% of the population lack B12. And I'd like to correct that it's a vegan problem, so let's grow beyond that. Because I've looked at the last 32 years, over 17,000 people, these tests, and found that literally meat eaters, dairy eaters, fish eaters have a little bit higher incidence of B12 deficiency than vegans do. Raw vegans have a little bit different, but if you're not taking a B12, you're cruising for a bruising. Most dementia, a great part of neurological problems come from B12 deficiencies. If you don't have adequate essential fats in your brain, why my generation, by the way, the baby boomers, 25% of us are destined for Alzheimer's, is in part what I'm speaking about at this point. As Anna Maria also says, add stage 3 diabetes, which is sugar and insulin problems within the brain. So we're big advocates of supplementation because our job is to look at the greatest science, the greatest research, to get people as strong, as healthy, as rapidly as we can, because many of these people are fighting major diseases. And other people like me who are as healthy as rock, I'm just having a lot of fun, so I want to hang around as long as I can. I want my hair not to turn white. I don't want my skin to get wrinkles. Any of you have any of these same desires? Raise your hand. So nutrition has a major role. As one of the greatest people in our country in the last century, Linus Pauling in 1968 said, every disease, and I'll add aging, he didn't say that, has a nutritional deficiency component. So you may want to read the book, Supplements Exposed, and this will help to keep you on track which ones to take. Food-based supplements may not be what you want. Food-created supplements are.
Remember this guy who had a bunch of porta potties that you have for shows outdoors and things like that, and then he said, when you're cleaning them up, guess what he finds? A ton of supplement and pills and medication, of course. Everything has to be bioavailable. It has to come from plants, and the B12 has to be a soil-based B12. So just think about that, not to gross you out.
No. By the way, over 91% of supplements are chemically made. And they slapped the word natural because the laws were created in Washington, in Paris, and London in the 1930s that natural only means 10% plant. So when you see natural, go the other way. When you see organic, by the way, it took them years to convince me to put organic on the supplements we have, because organic has been prostituted for 12 or 13 years. 1 atom of nitrogen, you can call your supplement organic.